to the Brits. No Brits?
George and Jeff talk to Dreamfinder. Welcome back to In the Hot Seat with Communicore Weekly. This time we have a very, very special guest, most known as someone from the childhood memories of pretty much everyone who's been to Epcot in the 80s, is Ron Schneider, also known as the Dreamfinder from Journey into Imagination. Ron recently just released his memoirs, From Dreamer to Dreamfinder, which is a fantastic book, and we're really, really happy to have him on the show. So yes, Ron, thank you very much for coming on the show. George and I both really appreciate it. We're both huge fans of yours, and we both loved the book. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much. Nice of you to say so.
Now, I really am interested to know what led you to create the book. Why did you think this was a story that needed to be told?
Well, the idea for doing a book, actually, I guess you could say, goes back to the 70s when I first got interested in theme parks. I read something that Van France wrote in one of the books about Disneyland. He said, no school teaches a course on how to do this, and nobody raises their kids to work in a theme park. And when I read that, I went, but that's what I want to do. I want to learn that stuff. And that's one of the things that motivated me to follow this career. And so I was always consciously pursuing that course of study. I was always taking the jobs that would lead me to greater knowledge and greater insight into how this particular kind of performance worked in interacting with the audience. And as I was doing that, it was always in the back of my mind that I'm learning these things and I'm gaining this knowledge, and I should write this down, because what I'm finding is something that would be valuable to the people who are going to come after me. And then I got to after I left Dreamfinder, people started coming up to me and saying, tell us about that, tell us about that. I did a couple presentations about theme park entertainment and writing for theme parks, and then the 25th anniversary came along, and I did a presentation for the NFFC about my career as Dreamfinder, and Jim Hill was in the audience, and Jim comes up to me afterwards and says, that's a book. And I started to think seriously about, maybe it's time to write this thing. And so I sat down with all good intentions, and I wrote the first chapter, and that sat there, and it sat there, and it sat there. And I'm a really great procrastinator. And then what happened was, a couple years later, people around me started to pass away. We got to the point where God stops giving you things and starts taking them away. And Fulton Burley passed away, and Wally Bogue passed away, and Betty Taylor passed away, and a friend of mine, Steve Hansen, who I did a lot of work with, passed away. And a friend of his found a half-completed memoir that he'd written, put that up on Facebook, and I read that, and I went, I got to get off the dime on this if I'm going to do this. And I knew I wanted to, and I knew that I wasn't sure if it was going to be a memoir or a textbook. And it wound up being both. And so I created a blog and used the blog to write the first draft.
And that was one of the questions as I was reading the book, just completely blown away by your career. I mean, everything that you've done, everything that led up to talking to us tonight, basically. Wow, that's pretty good. That's the pinnacle of the career. Interesting. This is it. Sorry. Well, you had so many great details and so many great stories and anecdotes, meeting all these Disney legends and other theme park people. You sort of mentioned you were writing some of this down. So did you keep a journal of some sort, or how did you remember everything?
I hold a lot of grudges. That's it. I hold a lot of grudges, and so the people who did me wrong, hello there. There are a lot of bridges smoldering in the book, and then there are the things that I'm very proud of and the things that I learned. It all came together, and as I developed it. At first, I was thinking I was going to do a combat. I knew I was going to interpolate the memoir with the textbook. The lessons learned with how I learned them. And that's how the memoir came out. And then at the end, it just became a straight textbook where I just recounted all these things and used some of the examples from my own experience. But no, I didn't write everything down. In fact, there's a lot of stuff people have come up to me and said, you remember the time we did? And I had memory of it whatsoever.
Well, you weren't holding a grudge against them then, so of course you didn't remember it.
Well, it's going to be in the next. No, I've had too much fun to forget most of it. So I've still been there, just all in my brain. And I'm like every other old guy. I'm always telling stories of the good old days.
Now, you were just talking about your blog, and to me, when you first started doing the blog, I started reading it religiously whenever you put up a new entry, and it was a really interesting experiment for me to see how you were pretty much developing how the book was going to go with the blog, and then once you finished your story, essentially, you started taking posts down, and I can see in the book how much you filled them out and like fleshed out those stories even more to create these chapters of the book, and I just thought that was absolutely brilliant of you to do.
It was, wasn't it? Well, when I went back and started reading the early ones, I mean, the writing was just terrible. And then I started reading up a little bit on memoirs, and I started reading other people's memoirs and realized I've got to get more personality into it, more of how things felt. Looking at it from the fan's perspective, I realized that what I had there was a lot of dates, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. But I wanted to give a feeling for how it felt to be there and the circumstances. And one of the things, the toughest things was I wanted to write it, and I wrote the thing in the present tense. And my instinct is to write in the past tense. Well, this happened then, and this happened, and then this happened. But it's much more exciting, I found, if you write in the present tense. This happens, and this happens, and this happens. And so I had to constantly, I'd finish a chapter, and then I'd have to go back through the whole thing and take the past tense out of everything and put everything in the present tense. But it reads so much better, and it takes the reader along with me on the journey. And so that was a major point for me. But yeah, it just turned out to be the ideal way to put it together. And this way also, I never had to feel like I was writing a book, feel overwhelmed by that. All I ever had to write was the next page and a half for the blog. And I put that up, and every so often somebody like you would come up and say, hey, that was a great entry. And it was the attaboy I needed to move forward.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So Jeff takes full responsibility for the book, I guess, at this point.
Jeff has been a tremendous support through this whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's right from the start.
It seems like with the beginning of the book, talking about the love of Disneyland, all the research that you did on your own, you know, because there weren't blogs and podcasts and books at this point in time. There weren't many books written about it. You talked about finding all the information yourself, which I think a lot of us can relate to. But then you start to work for the Disney company and Wally Bogue. You know, that to me was just an astounding part of the book, is getting to work. Do you have a favorite part of your career? I guess a long way to get to that. You know, because, you know, you talk about being at CalArts and then working at Magic Mountain and then working at Disney and then Universal. I don't want to ruin everything in the book. People need to read it. But what stands out for you as being your favorite part of your career? It's
a favorite child question, because I've done such a wide variety of things in a wide variety of venues under a wide variety of situations. And, you know, I started with the dream of the Golden Horseshoe and spent the first 10 years trying to get to the Golden Horseshoe. But at the same time, in the meantime, I had the dream come true of being a Universal Studios tour guide back when the tour in Hollywood was this 2.5-hour epic. And I always admired the guy who was up front with the microphone. So that was a dream come true. The Horseshoe was a major thing, and I could have stayed there for 15 years and been very happy. But then I never could have imagined an opportunity like Dreamfinder, be able to originate a character, be the first to do it, to be the spokesman for all of Epcot Center, and to have the effect on people that character has had. Then to turn around and do Fort Liberty, where I got to write and direct and star in a themed dinner attraction and create the show the way I wanted to and manage it the way I wanted to, as brief as that lasted. And then at Universal Studios Florida, as creative manager of the Celebrity Lookalikes 2, where I wasn't performing at all, but I was passing what I had learned in the prior 20 years on to these wonderfully talented people who worked for me, and to watch them blossom and to feel that reward. And then that turned into a full writing job. And so it's been one thrill after another. and right up to the last thing I did for Disney was my work with the Monsters Incorporated at the lab floor, where I was working again with the cutting edge technology and with wonderfully talented people. So there's no one favorite. It's just a lot of different things that are favorites for different reasons.
Yeah, and Dreamfinder is such a public character, and obviously you're well aware of how people associate you with that. But I think everybody's going to be surprised when they read the book at what you did at Universal, and then, like you said, with the Monsters Inc. laugh floor. How many people walked through those doors and laughed, and then didn't even know you were behind the scenes, so to speak, as part of it. I have to admit, I love that attraction. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, me too.
It's great. Well, and I had a question, and then it went bye-bye. But that's okay, because I'm just so excited to talk to you. The book was great. Really, really enjoyed it. So well written, and was surprised at the end to see the technical manual, so to speak, that you've already sort of talked about it. That being sort of one of the genesis or one of the ideas for the book. Is that something that you'd want to flesh out further, or take on the road and teach your own class about themed entertainment or something like that?
That notion has been buzzing around in my brain of doing more of a straightforward textbook. Developing the little bit that's in the book now, it's about 15% of the book. But it has led me to thinking about how I would flesh that out into more of a straightforward textbook, because there's nothing on that now. There's wonderful books by Gary Izzo on interactive acting, and Jeff Worth has a wonderful book on interactive acting, but there's nothing about dealing creatively within the corporate structure of the theme park and the specifics of that kind of performance. There's nothing out there. And so that idea is buzzing around the back of my brain. If I do launch into something else, it would be that. But again, I'm overwhelmed by when I started writing this book. I'm overwhelmed with the idea of scaling that mountain. So I may start on something again using the blog to flesh something out and see what comes out of that. So yeah, that thought has occurred to me. There is going to be a friend of mine who's teaching an adjunct. He's an adjunct professor at one of the local colleges, and he's going to be teaching a course starting, I think, later this month on the Disney organization, and he's using my book as a textbook.
Is he really?
Ooh.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. And then I'm going to be a guest speaker towards the end of the class.
Well, I mean, for Appendix 2 in the book about the 5 things you need for the good writing for theme parks, to me, that should be something that everybody that works in any position in a theme park needs to read, because even, what was it, maybe 15 pages, was so jam-packed full of great information for people. I think the suits need to read it too, because I think they would understand what goes on in the creative world a hell of a lot better if they just read that one little section.
Well, I like to think you're right. That was pretty much me speaking directly to the people, because that write the stuff. I've seen too many shows. I have this character in the back of my brain. It's not a character, actually. It's a machine. It's called the Hackmeister 2000. And I'm convinced that this monster exists, and it's writing most of the shows you see in theme parks. And sometimes I'll see a show that is just so awful that I'll know it came from the Hackmeister 2000. And
that's a sitcom. It's got to be a sitcom.
Well, over the past couple of years, there's been a resurgence of the Dreamfinder. Obviously, you've been centered around it, and I love how at the very beginning of the book is the D40, the D23, where you came on stage and sang, and I was there. It was astounding, and you described it perfectly, and I was hooked right from the beginning of that. How has it been with this fan-based resurgence, where so many people are really interested in your story and want to know the real Ron Schneider, as well. Has that been an exciting time for you, or?
It's been absolutely amazing.
Okay.
I love the fact that people have dug out their pictures of. I've been discovering all these pictures of me as the character on DeviantArt and on Flickr, and stuff's been popping up. My friends have been digging out pictures that they had. Some of the pictures in the book came from there. And the response after the D23 event was astounding.
Mm-hmm.
I've been just enjoying the heck out of it. And now with the book coming out, even more people are coming out of the woodwork. I was at a convention last weekend of furries at the Megaplex convention in Kissimmee for the furries, and a surprising number of people who had personal memories of the character and just loved meeting me and asking for autographs. And an old ham like me just loves stuff like that.
Well, looking at how your career seemed to develop over time, there were a lot of situations where you ran into management, and management won. And you went on your way, you took your bag and went to play with someone else. That seemed to happen a lot. And there was always something waiting for you. Did you ever have the feeling that this is the end, I'm never going to work again, or you just kept going?
Well, there are 2 chapters in the book you'll notice called freelancing.
Yes.
There's freelancing 1 and freelancing 2.
Yes.
And both of those signify times when I was questioning whether I was ever going to find another position. But it's always been a matter of wherever I land, bringing what I've learned in the past to that. And the thing I learned, I did Magic Mountain, Spillikin Corners for 4 years before I got hired on at Disneyland to do the Golden Horseshoe. I stayed at Magic Mountain. I wasn't enamored of Magic Mountain, but the opportunity that I managed to craft out of that place, thanks to my boss, Ernie Guterjohn, the opportunity was so rewarding and so freeing and had such wonderful potential that I could blossom there. And that when it came time for me to audition at Disney, they knew about me. They had heard about me, because I had stayed in one place and done the best work I could. And I always tell people this. I say, if you have someplace you want to be, don't worry about getting there. Stay where you are, do the best work you can, because somehow, if you're supposed to be there, it'll wind up happening. And my career built like that the quality of my prior work, people got to know me, and I had developed a reputation. And so quite often I would go from one position to another position to another position. And that's really the best way I found in this particular industry to get the most exciting jobs, because people come up with they'll have a need, like Dreamfinder. They needed a Dreamfinder. They wanted a scrolling Dreamfinder. Where do you find one? How do you put an ad for one?
The Dreamfinder store, of course.
You do this at the character auditions, where people are basically there to dance. But I showed up, and I was able to be the answer to their problem. I was able to plug that hole. I was a guy who walked up. I had by that time 12 years of experience creating characters in theme parks. I had a puppetry background. I had a theater background, and I was able to walk in and say, I'm the answer to that problem. Same thing with the Golden Horseshoe. They were looking for someone to play a traveling salesman. I was able to walk in and be a traveling salesman for them. So it was simply a matter of solving that problem for them. For the celebrity lookalikes at Universal, same thing. They needed someone who knew Laurel and Hardy and W.C. Fields and could write for them. I had met in a prior job, which only lasted for 3 weeks, but I met the head of the character department in Universal, and he knew me as someone who had this encyclopedic knowledge of old Hollywood and could write for these characters. And so one thing just led to another, just led to another, just led to another. And so generally, I've been very lucky, and for the main body of my life, for the 40 years that I write about in this book, it just kind of progressed one job to another. Even when I was freelancing, there was stuff there that I was getting based on my reputation and on the fact that people would call me in on a project, and I'd be able to contribute creatively, and sometimes that led to a paying gig.
Hopefully more often than not, it would lead to a paying gig.
Well, Well, things are pretty dry right now. It's time for another chapter on freelance.
Hey, you know what? The book just came out. I mean, the book's been out, at the time of us talking right now. It's been out a week, if that, and I can think of probably at least 20 people off the top of my head that have already bought it and started reading it. So I'm hoping that this book is a huge, huge success for you, and that it brings even more attention to you and possibly brings you more jobs because again. Even just, when we met for the first time last year, I knew you specifically as Dreamfinder. And then we talked and you told me about a little more about your career. And then the next time we talked to you, we learned a little bit more about your career. And even now, when I read the book, I learned so much more about you than I knew before. Like, even the Monsters, Inc. laugh floor, I had no idea that you did that until we talked a couple weeks ago about that interview I did with somebody else who totally made stuff up about it. So, I don't understand how anyone working in a theme park creative part today can read this book and be like, we need this guy to do something for us because you're a huge resource in that aspect. Hopefully.
Oh, thank you.
I'm hoping they say that.
Thank you for saying so. The one of the facts of the industry, though, is people get these jobs because they're in the right place at the right time. They know the right people. And I was very lucky for a long time. But now there are other people that are in the right place at the right time and know the people who are in power now. And everybody wants to be Walt Disney. Everybody wants to be the guy that comes up with this stuff. You may not be terribly good at it, but if you've got a chance for the job, you're going to take it. I had a friend of mine who once said to me, I want a reputation for being able to come up with creative ideas. And I said, okay, I can understand that. Later on, we were talking. He says, my problem is that I don't come up with creative ideas. And I said to him, well, if you can't come up with creative ideas, why do you want a reputation for being able to come up with creative ideas? And he looked at me and he said, what's your point? And I just dropped the subject right there. Everybody wants to do this kind of stuff because it looks like fun and it looks easy, and so the shows are childlike, so they seem childish. They mistake those two, and so they give these writing jobs to, or the time I was there, they would give these writing jobs to anybody. I think it's becoming more selective now. And the quality of writing some of the time is a lot better, but still, I think the theme parks run about 50%. They'll for every wonderful show that they put up, like the memory show on the castle, for every show like that, somewhere there's a Stitch's Supersonic Celebration waiting to happen.
Wait a second. So you're saying you don't like Stitch's Supersonic Celebration?
I'm saying
I don't have to like it. It's gone.
Yes.
Okay, you get the point on that one.
Thank you. That's another one of the smoldering bridges. See there, I keep putting my foot in it. That's.
but you keep bouncing back, which is great.
Well, thank you.
Coming back and doing that, so. No, it's almost like we need to have a Little Orange Bird Dreamfinder reunion tour.
That would be kind of interesting, actually. Of course, now that you say that, it can never happen because now it's not their idea, it's ours.
Oh, that's true.
So, way to ruin that one for everyone, George. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Lawyers.
Loose time.
So, not that I want you to burn any more bridges, and by this no, wait, let me finish my question first before you start laughing, George. This question is basically a way to get you to tell a story that I've heard you tell twice before about how you going on the current version of Journey into Your Imagination with a group of kids and their response to it. So I want to know your feelings about the current version of Journey into Your Imagination.
My feelings are pretty much the same as everybody else's. I think that I appreciate everybody's campaign to bring Figment back, and the company just plugged him in there. But I think that the poor person who had to write the script was faced with a situation where Figment really didn't belong in that ride. And so they wrote Figment the easiest way you can write a character like that, and it's make him a pest. You bring in the little character and you make him a pest, and you treat him like a pest, and supposedly comedy comes blossoming out of that, which didn't obviously happen. But it filled a need. It filled a need, and everybody got to take pictures with Figment, and that was it. But the story you're referring to was in celebrating the 40th anniversary of Walt Disney World with Lou Mongello and his wonderful people, and he set up an interview with me in front of the pavilion, and I got to ride through with a bunch of the box people and the people from the Lou Mongello site, and Lou's kids and a couple other kids rode with me on the ride. We're sitting up in the front of the front car of the train, and we're going through, and I think they're videotaping. I've never seen the tape, but we come through, and at the end of the ride, they come up to the final scene with the computer where it's going to measure our imaginations, and there's this quiet spot there. There's this lull. And I just turned to the kids right off the top of my head and said, "So, kids, what did we learn today?" And all the kids went, "Nothing!" Just as like we'd rehearsed it. And when you consider that the original ride was this wonderful, inspiring thing, when you got to the end of it, you identified with Figment, and you knew that imagination was something that was in you, and it had all this meaning. And suddenly we get to the end of this new ride, and their kids just pipe up with nothing, which is, it's a shame. It's just a dirty shame, because this same opportunity, there's an opportunity in all these pavilions and all these shows. There's a potential to touch people and change their lives. That's what Epcot was all about at one point, and still can be. And the funny thing is that all the things that we mount, all the big technology and all the special effects and all the money we pour into these things, the one thing that costs nothing is the script, is the story. That's the thing you can fix the cheapest. And they spent all that money building a ride that teaches us nothing. It's about getting sprayed with skunk spray and showing us an upside-down toilet. And that was a wasted opportunity. But I have faith that somewhere locked behind the doors at Imagineering, there are concepts for a new Imagination ride. It may not have Dreamfinder or Figment in it, but it has the right spirit. I believe that the Dreamfinder and Figment will live on in spirit as long as there's Tony Baxter left in the world. It's a paraphrase of a very wise man.
I wasn't expecting the Tony Baxter reference. I was like,
we're kind of laughing because we kind of have a joke about Tony Baxter where we like Tony Baxter, but we also feel like his mustache is a Horcrux that he hides part of his soul in for some reason.
Why?
I don't know. I don't even remember how it came up.
It's just a clever thing. I think it's just a clever thing to say.
Yes.
And no, I think if there's anything hiding in his mustache, it's the spirit of Walt Disney.
Maybe it's a Horcrux for Walt Disney. I mean, it's very possible.
It could be.
But I don't think Walt Disney killed anybody.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, George. You go.
No, I was just going to ramble about the book until a question came up.
Oh, no, okay.
Like I said, I still love the book. It was still so charming and so fantastic and so well done.
Yay.
I just absolutely, even with Hugh's input. So, because Jeff can cut that part out too.
We got to mention Hugh Allison by name, my editor, who was a stern taskmaster, but really helped the book, and I owe him a lot for all of his efforts. And but boy, that editing process is a killer, as Jeff is discovering now.
Yes, very much so.
How's your book coming, by the way, Jeff? Let's give that a plug while we're here.
It's coming along. We're editing right now, and we're hoping it'll be done soon. Early December's the release date so far, so we're sticking to that. That'll be good.
That's well, everybody take that one with a pound of salt.
No, I have no doubt it'll be out in early December. It might even be out earlier than that with the rate that we're going at this point. So I think that's like a late projection date at this point.
That was a terrible plug.
It is I'm a terrible plugger.
You didn't even say it's.
The thing is, he's writing a book with a real Disney legend, not some kid who came along. And I think that you're not going to have any problems with selling that book. Because
what do you mean? Are you saying that you're not a real Disney legend? Because I fully you may not have the official title.
I have no plaque up at the studio with my handprints.
All right, but you may not have the title, but like in the hearts of kids everywhere and adults, you were definitely a Disney legend. You were a major part of a lot of people's childhoods and even their adulthoods when they met you as a Dreamfinder. So I mean, you can't deny that.
The vast majority of people who met the Dreamfinder met Steve Taylor. I was only there for the first 5 years.
Well, those are the important years.
The Dreamfinder is the Disney legend, and I simply was lucky enough to get in there first and help establish him. But I think that when you're talking about Dreamfinder, the reason he's beloved and remembered well to this day is because of the work of Tony Baxter and Barry Braverman and Kirk Wise and the people who created that original ride and created something that touched people so wonderfully. And that I was able to carry that forward into the picture-taking experience is my claim to fame. But really, it's like the reason people are so tremendously loyal to the Disney organization, in spite of the fact that some of the stuff they put out there right now may not be first class. It's because of Walt Disney. It's because of the lasting legacy of Walt Disney. And the same thing happened with Dreamfinder. I think that the work that Tony Baxter and the Imagineers did back in the '80s is the reason that Dreamfinder is so precious to people now. And I'm very proud of that, and I can afford to be a little humble as my contribution to that is concerned, because I was just lucky enough to stumble onto it and hang around long enough, and for me it's a part of what I've done, and that's otherwise I wouldn't have a book. I'd have a pamphlet.
But a very informative pamphlet.
Very informative and brilliant purple pamphlet. Yeah.
To kind of speak on something you just touched on, and what you touched on before, what do you think that some theme parks, including Disney, could do nowadays to kind of improve the show standards that they have? Because nowadays, some of them are, I guess, kind of lax, is a nice way of putting it.
Well, read the book, kids. The 5 keys to great themed entertainment, right there in the appendix. The basic thing is, first of all, produce shows that you yourself, the executive, would want to see. Don't put stuff up there that is and think that's good enough for them, and that'll satisfy them. And that's something that I myself, I myself wouldn't care to see, but the audience will like that. You got to create stuff that you yourself would find entertaining. That's your most reliable source of finding quality stuff, is to set your own standards and stick by them. And then there's the question of respect that I discovered in writing the book. The thing that seems to run through all the quality work that's being done out there is a respect for the audience, a respect for the art form, a respect for the material, and a respect for the people who produce it and work there. And when you have that in your heart from the beginning, then you're going to create better stuff, and you're going to support it properly, and the audience will be able to tell the difference, and they respond to that. That's the short answer to this. I think that there's potential to do quality work in everything. This is what Walt Disney was. Walt Disney was a showman, and everything that he looked at, everything he touched, he wanted to improve it. So he looked at the primitive form of animation at the time and said, we can do something better with this. We can make the characters more lifelike. We can give them a more realistic physiognomy. That will enable us to care more about them. We can create greater art form in these things. We can make feature-length films that will stand out and tell a story and touch people's hearts. We go to an amusement park and it's dirty and it's dingy, and parents aren't able to enjoy themselves with the kids. Kids go on the rides and I get to sit on this bench. So let's create a place that is better than that. And he was able to, he was not the greatest artist in the world, but he had great artists around him, and he inspired them with his vision of how to make things better. And he did this in everything he touched. It's the secret of the man's success. It's the secret of the company's success when they get it right. And you'll notice that all this sterling work that's being done now in themed entertainment outside of Disney. And when you look behind the curtain, the magicians you'll see standing there are all former Imagineers. Mm-hmm. They're all people who learned their work at Imagineering and moved on because both the money was better somewhere else, but also because they found that they couldn't express themselves as fully as they might want to under the Disney strictures of having to create stuff that didn't push the envelope, that was more wholesome. And Disney's doing some wonderful work too, don't get me wrong. But I know that when I left off Disney, went to Universal Studios, I was able to write for the Blues Brothers. And that touches people in a different way. And the Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy, these are characters that could not have existed at Disney because they pushed the envelope. They were rebels. And the audiences love that kind of stuff. So this is a blossoming time for the industry and for the art form. And that's what it is. It's an art form. And there are people out there who grew up, as we have been, inspired by Disney, and now they're out there working for other companies and doing first-class work. And each side of this thing feeds the other. And there's no telling where this is going to go.
It's been fascinating to talk to you after reading the book, and I hope everybody does take the opportunity to pick it up because it is a fantastic read. So well done, and such an insight into you and the characters and everything that you've done as a theme park performer, for lack of a better term. I hate to just put you in that hole of being a theme park performer, but especially the dinner shows that you did everywhere. I'd love to read more about them and see some of these. So, but no, it's a fantastic book, and I do hope people pick it up.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate that.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for spending some time with us and telling us about your new book and the fantastic career that you have had. Is there anything you'd like to tell people, blog address, or just read the book?
Find the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or actually you can go to bambooforestpublishing.com and order personally autographed copies. Will be sent to your home.
I got me one of those.
There you are. And going to be at the Jeff Heimbuch event on the end of September.
That's right, the Jeff Heimbuch event. There's no George Taylor in there.
So why are we even mentioning it?
Well, for the people that get to come, they're going to be pretty excited. Yeah,
that's true.
And I will also be at the Disney event at the end of this month for the 30th anniversary of Epcot Center. So it's going to be a busy, and I will be turning 60 on September 27th.
Oh, so we're totally gonna have to have like a birthday celebration for you too. Now that you say that, we're totally gonna have to do that.
And the book makes a lovely birthday gift.
Yes,
it does.
Well, as long as we're not getting it for you.
Yeah, I already own a copy.
But if they buy the copy and give it to you, that's still okay.
Well, yeah, because then they're still giving you money for it.
I could sell it again. Just send me the cash, folks.
Do it that way. And are we going to play Pin the Tail in the Dreamfinder at the Communicore Weekly Live show, or we're not supposed to tell him that?
If you try to play that, you'll be trying to pin the tail on the Dreamfinder as he walks out the door.
Okay, so we're going to scratch that off the agenda.
Well, at least it wasn't my idea. Oh, wait a minute, it was.
Well, again, Ron, thank you very, very much for coming on the show. You can, again, find the book on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and bambooforestpublishing.com to get a personally autographed copy, which I think is the better deal, personally. So go for that one.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure.
And we'll see you in September.
Yay!
Yay!